Hey guys, welcome back to the Brik House. Bungalow Brik here with week 1 of the Roar of the Sea and Sky Pokemon Unite Power Rankings tier list. We're going to go over the patch notes and the winner and losers of this patch, as well as our predictions for where these Pokemon are going to be ending up for this next week. So, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the Brik House. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So we're going to start things off with Glaceon. Glaceon has seen a buff to its base stats, geared more so towards that late game, having an up to 350 increase to its HP, as well as increases to its defense and special defense. Icicle Spear was also buffed 10%, and Freeze Dry had its cooldown reduced by 1 second, going from 8.5 seconds to 7.5 seconds, and its special attack increased duration, going from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. Glaceon's Unite move Diamond Stage now has a 20% damage increase, and Unite says here, Glaceon has had low durability, even amongst attackers, and was often knocked out immediately when approached by opponents. Its stats have been improved to increase survivability, and Freeze Dry and Icicle Spear have been strengthened to allow Glaceon to deal sustained damage. So, Glaceon was a Pokemon who was in a could be better tier for the last couple of weeks, definitely seeing a very low win rate, and so these increases to its base stats were much needed. However, seeing these damage increases to its Icicle Spear and its Unite move definitely is a bit of a overtune on this Pokemon right now. Definitely is going to be getting that Battle Pass privilege for the next couple months. And right now I'm honestly comfortable on shooting Glaceon all the way up to a must-play tier. Again, definitely was a more frail Pokemon, however it was definitely not lacking in damage. But now that it has this huge increase to its stats, it's going to be shredding a lot more opponents very early on in the game. Next up we have Mewtwo X. Mewtwo X seeing an increase to its HP, attack, defense, and special defense, mostly geared towards that late game. Also a change to its ability Pressure, which makes it so that the Mega Gauge isn't lost when Mewtwo X gets knocked out. Teleport has also seen a movement speed increase going from 20% to 30% and a damage increase from 10% to 20%. Teleport Plus also seeing a damage increase from 20% to 30%. They say here, since the last battle adjustments, Mewtwo X's win rate has remained low. The risk of being knocked out before Mega Evolving was extremely high, making it difficult to perform well. Its overall combat capabilities have been raised to make it easier to fight on the front lines, and adjustments have been made to maintain the Gauge even if knocked out. So these are definitely some welcome changes for Mewtwo X. Was a Pokemon who was just suffering very hard ever since the Mega Stones were added into the game, and was forced to take a Mega Stone into one of its slots. We'll see if this is enough to put Mewtwo X back into a meta-relevant position. However, I think we'll just slightly move it up to the could be better tier for this week. There still haven't been too many Mewtwo X's as of yet, and it currently does have a bug with its Mega Evolution, where the game prevents you from Mega Evolving for the rest of the game. So, next up we have Mewtwo Y, who has seen very similar buffs, also seeing a increase to its HP, special attack, defense, and special defense, geared towards that late game. Also seeing a change to its Pressure ability, and we also see buffs to its Teleport, having its cooldown going down from 11 seconds to 10 seconds, its movement speed increase going from 10% to 30%, and its damage increase going from 10% to 20%. Teleport Plus also seeing a damage increase from 15% to 30%, and Recover going from a cooldown of 11 seconds to 10 seconds. They say here, like Mewtwo X, Mewtwo Y's win rate has remained low since the last adjustment, so the risk upon being knocked out has been reduced. Additionally, its mobility has been enhanced, allowing it to leverage strength as an attacker that deals damage while maintaining distance from opponents. So Mewtwo Y seeing a slight more of a buff than Mewtwo X, and I think it's definitely needed for this Pokemon. It was consistently performing the lowest out of any Pokemon in the game week over week, and was really just not a good recommendation to pick up. Hopefully these buffs can put Mewtwo Y more into a relevant position. However, for this week we will still just put it up to the could be better tier, right under Alolan Ninetales. So next we have Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh seeing a buff to its Unite move, Rekindling Flame, with the energy requirement now going down to 100,000, which is approximately a 17% decrease on the cost. They say that the energy required to activate its Unite move was high, limiting the number of times it could be used during a match. By reducing the energy required, Ho-Oh can now revive allies more actively. This is a huge buff for Ho-Oh. Its Unite move is definitely a big game changer, and now being able to get off an extra one throughout the game can now drastically improve your team's team fighting capabilities. We already had Ho-Oh in a solid pick tier for the last week. Definitely going to be keeping him in the same position. We'll be just slightly moving him up above Umbreon, and is still a Pokemon in a very good position. Next up we have Scizor and Scyther. Scizor and Scyther both seeing a defense and HP increase, as well as Scizor getting a defense increase going from 40% to 50% when it uses its boosted attack. Scyther also receiving a buff to its dual wing, now having a 10% increase on its HP recovery. They say here, to further emphasize Scizor's characteristics, resilience against physical damage, its durability has been improved to allow it to fight more tenaciously. At the same time, Scyther's durability and recovery, which were insufficient for fighting on the front line, have also been increased. So very nice buffs for Scizor. Getting that defense increase is definitely going to give it a lot more survivability in that late game teamfight. However, as I usually say, Scyther is typically the better option to run, and as Scyther also had gotten buffed, as well as that 10% increase to its HP, it definitely is going to be performing a bit better still in my opinion. So Scizor becoming an increasingly strong pick, still going to be put in the could be better tier, as the potential that Scyther has just vastly outweighs Scizor. Scyther going to go up into a solid pick tier again after moving down the last week, just going to be at the bottom. There is a possibility where the better option of the two can change, but until then we'll leave them where they are. So next up we have Gyarados. Gyarados getting a buff to its waterfall, the shield amount having a 30% increase as well as a 10% increase to its damage. Dragon Breath having a basic attack / boost attack damage increase of 15%. They say here to further enhance its explosive power after evolving, the sustained fighting capability from Waterfall and its basic attack damage after hitting with Dragon Breath have been buffed. So we're getting some Gyarados buffs right in time for the release of Mega Gyarados. My suspicion is that Mega Gyarados was doing a bit more damage than the regular Gyarados. Gyarados is a rather inconsistent Pokemon, as its first stage evolution is fairly weak. Magikarp does not have that much fighting capability, however does need to be involved in these fights in order to evolve quicker. However, these buffs do give Gyarados a lot more firepower towards that mid to late game where it truly does shine, where the trade-off of running the Magikarp might be worth it. For this week, we'll put Gyarados just at the very bottom of the not bad tier. With the new map having more citrus berries around, it can give Magikarp more opportunities to get into some of these engagements while healing up in order to get to its evolution quicker, and these buffs make Gyarados that much stronger for that late game fight. So next up we have Tyranitar. Tyranitar having a buff to its Dark Pulse and 35% increase to its damage. Ancient Power also having a cooldown from 11 seconds to 10 seconds, and the shield amount having a 20% increase. They say here, as Tyranitar has struggled to be effective for a long time, the frequency and shield amount of Ancient Power have been improved. The additional damage when hitting the same opponent consecutively with Dark Pulse has also increased. Tyranitar being a late game Pokemon can do a lot of damage once it can finally get to that third stage evolution. However, once you're in that Pupitar stage, it's very hard to level up while still contributing to the team. Dark Pulse as a moveset has also fallen out of favor on Tyranitar, so it's really nice seeing a huge buff to this move, and I expect Tyranitar to do a lot more during these final Kyogre fights. This week we will be moving him up to the not bad tier, just right above Aegislash, and I think Tyranitar can be a really good sleeper pick for this next season, as it is already a very tanky all-rounder. So next up we have Dhelmise. Dhelmise getting a lot of balance fixes for this last patch. Its Whirlpool getting buffed, having its cooldown going from 6 seconds to 5 seconds, as having also gaining a 10% damage increase. The third area of effect hit going from 2.3 meters to 3.3 meters. And they have also made a change so that Dhelmise can now move while using Whirlpool. Anchor Shot also having an increase in diameter from 1 meter to 1.5 meters. Power Whip also having a 10% decrease to its damage. And its Unite move, Seaweed Snare, getting a nerf as well, having a 40% decrease on the HP recovery. They say here that the usability of Whirlpool and Anchor Shot have been improved. Whirlpool can now be activated while moving, broadening tactical options. Anchor Shot's hit registration has also been improved to fix situations where it appeared to hit visually but not register. So honestly, some huge changes to Dhelmise, a Pokemon that was in a relatively good position has honestly been completely blown open with a simple change of having it move during Whirlpool. It is such a strong move that also can immobilize, which makes it so you cannot use any abilities or auto attacks. And even though it had been moved, just buffing Anchor Shot and Whirlpool has now made this Pokemon one of the scariest to run into in the entire game. Dhelmise going to be shooting all the way up to a must-play tier right now. There's not really an answer to this Pokemon, as he is very strong, and with the full heal nerfs as well, it just makes this Pokemon even stronger than before. That does mean that Urshifu will have to move down to our solid pick tier. Still a really strong pick, but right now just cannot compare with Dhelmise. Next up we have Latias. Latias having a nerf to its Dragon Pulse, the psychic projectile damage having a 12% decrease, Mist Ball also getting a 10% decrease, as well as Dragon Cheer's shield amount having a 10% decrease. They say here that Latias was performing too well in both offense and support. Its ability to protect allies and deal damage to opponents have been nerfed to balance it with other supporters. There had also been a bug fix with Latias that had addressed using Dragon Cheer on no other target, being able to shield yourself twice, which was unintended bug. That has now been fixed as well, which does unintentionally nerf Latias a little bit more. Latias was definitely on top for the last couple of weeks, having some huge amounts of damage, able to easily stack to over 100 Aeon energy in games they got ahead in. These nerfs definitely knock Latias out of our must-play tier for this next week. Still gonna be hovering in our solid pick tier, and we'll be swapping places with Blissey right now. We'll keep an eye on Latias, see how its win rate is affected by these changes. However, this is definitely a huge nerf for Latias, especially with its offensive power. Next up we have Darkrai. Darkrai getting nerfed as well, having a 10% decrease to its boosted attack damage. Dark Void also having an increase to its cooldown, going from 4 seconds to 6 seconds, and Nasty Plot also being nerfed with its time to recover a use going from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. They say that the combo of repeatedly putting opponents to sleep and attacking them one-sidedly was too powerful. The frequency of Dark Void and the burst damage from boosted attacks have been lowered to create room for opponents to counterattack. Just like with Latias, these are huge nerfs for Darkrai, definitely going to be affecting its potential dramatically. It had gotten buffed this last patch due to being a Battle Pass Pokemon. However, now that we have a new Battle Pass Pokemon, it's time to nerf Darkrai back to where he was before. Darkrai is incredibly strong with its Nasty Plot being able to move around the map. However, the nerfs to its cooldown does dramatically reduce the amount of pressure it can get during the game, as well as those damage nerfs do limit its potential to do those level 5 dives on those lanes. So for this next week, we will be moving Darkrai down to the solid pick tier, just above Talonflame, and we'll be replacing with Dodrio, who will be inhabiting our must-play tier for this next week. So next up we have Clefable. Clefable having a nerf to its Moonlight, having a 5% decrease to its recovery amount, as well as a nerf to Follow Me, having its shield amount being nerfed by 10%. They say that the playstyle of using Follow Me to draw attention and hinder opponents while safely returning due to high durability and recovery was too strong for a supporter. The recovery and shield amounts have been reduced. Clefable still going to be a very strong supporter despite these nerfs. Moonlight still is going to be providing your team with a lot of HP, and moves like Gravity definitely do shut down a lot of the all-rounders on the other team. Still going to be in our solid pick tier for this next week, just at the top above Latias, and I definitely think we're going to be seeing a lot more Clefable. Next up we have Suicune. Suicune having its base stats actually being nerfed, especially towards that late game. Also receiving a nerf to its pressure ability, having a 10% decrease to its shield amount, and a nerf to its Avalanche, which also is receiving a 15% decrease to its damage. They say here that despite being an all-rounder, Suicune was overwhelmingly powerful due to its combination of high damage, high hindrance capability, and durability. Its early game offensive power and late game durability have been reduced. Suicune definitely a very strong Pokemon, easily use that EXP share and help another all-rounder in its lane get ahead due to its built-in move kit. It definitely was very oppressive, especially to Pokemon that had to evolve in that early game. So it's very welcome seeing the nerfs on its Avalanche. We will be moving Suicune down a couple tiers, however. Still going to be in our solid pick tier as it does still have that built-in CC and support capability, so we will be putting it just under Mimikyu in our solid pick tier. Still a very good pick, however definitely going to be feeling that in the early game. Next up we have Alolan Raichu. Alolan Raichu seeing a nerf to its Electro Ball, having an 8% decrease to its damage. They say that the burst damage from this move was high and its ability to instantly KO opponents when placed in goal zones or grass was too powerful, so the damage has been slightly reduced. So despite having an 8% decrease to its Electro Ball, the map changes do give this move a lot more value still. Right now on this Kyogre map there are a lot more bushes that you can hide in, which are perfect places for Raichu to throw its Electro Ball without the enemy knowing. So despite the nerfs to Electro Ball, it still will remain a very strong move, and I think Raichu is still that strong pick, however, currently being outclassed by Glaceon due to its buffs as well. So Raichu will be going down to the solid pick tier. We're actually putting him right behind Delphox for this next week, and we'll see how Raichu does. Next up, we have Mamoswine. Mamoswine having a buff to its HP, defense, and special defense, however having a nerf to its Icicle Crash, its damage having a 10% decrease, as well as a nerf to its Earthquake, with the time the opponent is unable to act going from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. They say that the ability to create damage while rendering opponents unable to act for a long time was too powerful, so the hindrance capability and damage have been reduced. In exchange, its durability has been improved to strengthen its role as a defender that can take damage on the front lines. So Mamoswine receiving some interesting balance adjustments. Mamoswine currently in an awkward position as it's one of those Pokemon that do require a lot of farm in order to level up. The buffs to its HP, defense, and special defense are definitely very nice to have, especially during that Piloswine phase of the game you're going to be in, as you'll be fairly weak compared to a lot of these other defenders which will be fully evolved at that point of the game. Mamoswine is not going to move and still going to be in a not bad tier just above Blastoise, a fairly decent pick. However, until we have these EXP share changes, it's going to be that Pokemon that takes a little bit too long to evolve. So the final Pokemon to go over is Mega Gyarados. Mega Gyarados already coming out to a strong start, dealing a lot of damage. We'll be putting Mega Gyarados at the top of our solid pick tier for this week. However, Dhelmise has been just such an impressive pick. I don't really see it doing more than Dhelmise right now. So as we're wrapping up the video, Dhelmise had actually received an emergency nerf. You see over on the Japanese Unite page that Whirlpool had actually been nerfed on Dhelmise. They see here that the effect of the third stage of the Whirlpool that immobilizes the opponent has been removed. However, the effect of attracting the Pokemon will remain, and the damage of the third stage of the Whirlpool has been decreased by a whopping 75%, which is just a huge nerf to this overpowered move. It was definitely doing a lot of damage, and it's very welcome to see such a quick change to a move that was completely breaking the game. Power Whip also now receiving an additional 20% damage reduction, and its Unite move also receiving a 12% damage reduction. So these changes should already be live. Dhelmise definitely not going to be doing as much damage as it did. It was a short-lived must-play tier for Dhelmise, however we will be knocking it down due to these nerfs. We will be putting it just above Mega Charizard X, as the fact that you can still move with Whirlpool and it has that attracting effect to it can still make this a very strong move indeed. This does mean that we will be putting Mega Gyarados into a must-play for this next week. This is one of the safer bets I feel due to the fact that the last couple of all-rounder releases, especially these Mega Pokemon, have been so strong. So we will see if we have to move Gyarados down for this next week or any other Pokemon up. But that will be this week's tier list. We have nobody in our Brik position for this week as both our Mewtwo's had been buffed, so luckily we won't have to put anyone in that position. A lot of changes, especially with the solid pick and must play tiers, having 4 new Pokemon in this must play, and especially now with the Kyogre map change, as well as the upcoming changes to how the EXP will work in this game. I expect there to be a lot of shakeup in our tier list, however only time will tell to see which Pokemon will land on top. Let me know down in the comments. Do you agree on the positions? Do you think anyone is too high, anyone is too low? How do you think of Mega Gyarados if you've played him already? Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the Brik House. And until next time guys, stay nasty.